Hello, and welcome to another live stream starring me, Scott Claus, for CG Spectrum. Talking to you today about 2D animation. See, we have a very special guest today already in the chat. So I wanted to say one of my two special announcements for today is happy birthday to Sherry. So happy birthday, Sherry, and I hope you had a wonderful day today. That's the first of my two special announcements. The other one I'm going to withhold. I'm not going to tell you what my other special announcement is. For anybody who's been following these streams of mine in particular, you may know that there's something kind of exciting happening with the animation department at CG Spectrum. And so I'm going to be dropping that information, an announcement about that shortly, but I'm going to, in typical style, as you see TV shows and radio and everything, it's like I'm going to just tease about it. And I'm not going to tell you what it is until later. So I'm going to make you watch some of this stream before I tell you. You'll be excited to know what it is. Again, if you've watched some of these streams with me before, then maybe you already know that something has been coming, something's been brewing. We're very excited about it, and I'm going to be announcing it later. So anyway, so hang on and stick with me for a while, and maybe you'll be pleased to know what I'm going to announce later. How's that? I once had somebody do this to me when I was studying at Oxford. It sounds so impressive, but it isn't really. And he was teasing, the dean of Worcester College, Oxford, was teasing me for the entire evening. He says, "Oh, dear boy, I know something that you don't know, and I'm going to share it with you later, but I'm not going to tell you now." And what it was that it was, I think, the birthday of Walt. It was the date of the opening of Disneyland, the park. And I was very underwhelmed, but it was fun. It was a fun game. So anyway, so I'm going to drop this information later. But until then, we're going to be talking about 2D animation a little bit. And so anybody who's joined me before, you know the drill. First off, I want to just make sure that you can see, you can hear, the music's not too loud. If you can hear it at all, that's fine. And so once I have that established, then we can move on. But it seems like everything's going well. So Sherry, yeah, I hope you're having a good day today. And again, happy birthday. I hope it was nice. And Happy New Year too. So hello from Africa. Hey, Kevin. Nice to see you. Thank you. Welcome. And thank you for joining us. Always happy to hear from our international friends. That's one of the things that we specialize in at CG Spectrum is we encourage and welcome people from all over the world to take our classes. We have people from different locations all over the world who are teaching, mentoring for us, people who've worked in the industry, and they're happy to talk to me. Well, hello, Dorado from Los Angeles, from about not too far away as far as I'm last time I checked anyway. Anyway, so yeah, welcome. And so today, tomorrow, right now, what I'm going to be talking about is animation takes. So a little bit different today in the sense that I'm going to just talk a little bit about something that's a thing with animation, which is animation takes. Before I get into just working on a scene, I've started this scene in the past. I worked on it a little bit, I don't know, months ago. I finished something last week, so if you want to see something that I've finished that's got all the bells and whistles and effects and color and everything, you might want to check out my last stream. You also might want to check out some of the other streams from CG Spectrum. There are plenty of different streams going. We have at least one every day as far as I know. And depending on what you're interested in, games is a big one. Animation in 3D is a big one that I'm very affectionate about, very near and dear to my heart. And then there's also concept art, which is always a really exciting one. They do a lot of fantastic stuff in there. So if you have other interests as well as animation, please feel free to stop by and check out cgspectrum.com. And you can learn all about the different programs there, or on whatever platform you're currently watching us right now, you can see what the other streams are that are available. So yes, we love to hear from you. And today, while I'm chatting away, please feel free to chime in on the chat at any time. I'm always keeping track of who's saying what and why and how, and it's a great opportunity for people to talk to each other and also to talk to me, and I love to answer questions. So if you have any questions whatsoever about anything at any point, as long as it's nice and on topic and not offensive, I'll be happy to talk about it, and helps too if it's on topic. But the topic today is basically just film, animation, TV shows, games, anything that has to do with motion graphics I'm excited about, and hope you guys are too. And so, as always, feel free to just start a conversation about whatever you like, and see if anybody picks up on it, including me. Welcome, Classics. I'm 87. Welcome back. It's always nice to have you here. Thank you for keeping me company today. As I said, I'm going to drop some exciting information later, but today we're going to be talking about, drumroll please, animation takes. I have a lot to say about these things. I have some visual aids to bring up as well. I thought it would be fun to talk a little animation history, a little bit of animation know-how before getting into the actual creation of something, which is, it's a fairly new scene for me. It's something I created for the school about a year ago, maybe longer, and really just kind of phoned it in. And so I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to turn it into a really cool scene. It's a fast one, but I've kind of revisited it, and I'm going to fix it up starting today and probably for the next couple weeks. It's basically a scene where I'm going to be using this character, which is O'Malley, the alley cat from Disney. And that's why I've titled this stream, the next couple ones will basically be how to do things in a Disney-ish style. That's the official technical term is Disney-ish. There are lots of people who work in a Disney-ish style and don't quite get there. I'm not promising that I can get there too, but I'll give it my best shot. I did work for them briefly, a couple years on 3 films, Pocahontas, Hunchback, and Hercules, back in the 90s, in the, I guess they call it the Renaissance era of Disney at this point. And so I do have some experience with the Disney style, but we weren't doing the old school Disney style. I consider this creature, this cat, kind of the old style. It was driven out of an interesting time in the Disney history when Walt had passed away and they were trying to figure out what the heck to do next. And so Ken Anderson had developed this idea that would be a little bit like Lady and the Tramp, a famous film that they did that made a lot of money and is still revered today, I think. Well, they just made a live action version out of it with CG animation not too long ago. So Aristocats was going to kind of ride on the coattails of that, and had a lot of the same elements, as well as Jungle Book, I believe, was done right before, and it was real successful, a few years before anyway. And so, so they pulled this together, and so this film, Aristocats, was in the sort of the scratchy Disney style, they call it, the late 60s, where they were trying to save some money and yet still do nice animation. It happens to be the style that I was born into when I was a wee little child, a tiny tot. That was what came out. I was almost not old enough to even see it. Certainly not old enough to remember it, but I remember it all the same. And it had a big influence on me. So that era is kind of my era when I was influenced the most. But I saw all the Disney films as a kid. And then, you know, other styles have come and gone, and others have stayed. And so this is a very specific style that I'm talking about, and that's why I thought it'd be fun to showcase. Not only is it where I live, but it is it's a kind of a historical landmark. That's a way they used to do things. However, things have changed a lot, and like I said, I worked at Disney when they were not doing this style, so I'm forcing myself to try and draw in this style to varying degrees of success. Watch this space, and we'll see if I pull it off by the end of the time that I've allotted, which is probably the next couple of weeks. All right, so I got a question already, just a random question. I'll have to keep your thoughts. Between generalization and specialization in animation to have a successful career. Kevin, that's an excellent question. So before we get started, I like to handle questions like this because I think it's really important. as much as people do animation because they love the medium, a lot of you are trying to get jobs. And that's one of the things that I like to talk about the most, is how I can help you prepare yourself for a career in not just animation, but in the world of show business. First off, let me just say this. I say this, I feel like I say this every week. You guys must get so tired of hearing it, those of you who are repeat offenders. But consider, Hollywood itself does not discriminate. What does that mean? Well, what that means is there is no one person out there who is Hollywood who is making decisions. Now, people within Hollywood discriminate a lot. There are varying degrees of individuals in entertainment who are, everyone wants to be a cat. All right, classic, you know about the Aristocats. So yeah, if anybody's interested in Aristocats, then just type in "everybody wants to be a cat." I can't really show it here. It's illegal for me to show things. In fact, I don't even know if I can show this, but I'm showing it anyway. Yeah, if you want to see what the Aristocats is all about, you could do better, no worse. You could do no better. Then type in "everybody wants to be a cat" on YouTube, and you'll see a really fun little sequence that's probably the best thing about the movie. Anyway, but yeah, so getting back to Hollywood. So Hollywood doesn't discriminate. Hollywood goes after money, and Hollywood will create whatever people will be willing to pay for. And so if you like something, you need to pay for it. You need to support it. If you have the choice between downloading something for free and then getting it, coughing up a little cash, I highly recommend that you pay a little bit of cash for it, because that brings money back to Hollywood, and then that tells them, eureka, let's make more of this. Now, it isn't always just money. It's, on Netflix, watch things, talk about things, make things successful, and then Hollywood goes, well, then we'll make more of that. By contrast, if things that are not necessarily very valuable are successful, they'll make lots of that too. So that's what I mean by Hollywood doesn't discriminate. So how does that have to, what does that have to do with your question? Well, so the question is generalization versus specialization. I was a master of all trades. How does that go? Jack of all trades, master of none. I was a person who had my finger in a lot of different pies. It's another cliched expression, but what it basically means is I learned how to do everything I could about animation because I wanted to do my own shorts initially, and then I did a few of them, and then I realized I didn't want to do that after all. But there was a time when I was very excited about being a director of things. I've since directed lots of things, just small things, personal things, nothing commercially, nothing where I was paid big bucks or anything. And figured out real fast that it's not really something I want to do. I still like doing stuff for myself, but it's not something I want to do for a living. And so since I did want to do that for a living for a while, I realized I had to learn how to do everything on a show. And in order to make my own shorts, I had to be able to do everything on the show because I would be doing everything. And so I was able to do all sorts of things in the studios. And as a result, I stayed employed. Now, by contrast with that, I was never someone that you would call a legend in the industry. I wasn't James Baxter or Andreas, or even some of the younger legends that I could list, but I'm not going to drop names. But there are younger animators aside from those greats like Andreas and James Baxter and Glenn Keane and Dale Bear and others, people who are in the generation below them who were masters in their own right. But the thing is that that's, these are people who were just born to do that sort of thing. They specialize in it and they became better and better at it, and they are masterful. For the rest of us mere mortals, certainly in my case, I was not going to ever be one of those people. I didn't have the dedication and I didn't have the natural gifts for it, I don't think. At least in my opinion, I did not have those natural gifts. And so I realized, well, what I really want to do is be able to do everything, a little bit of everything, so I can make my own stuff. But what I found was being able to do a little bit of everything meant that I was more employable. That meant that when times got tough in the studio, especially the smaller studios I worked at, they'd say, well, we don't have anything for this for you to do. Is there anything else you can do? I'd say, well, I can do a camera. I can sell Xeroxing. I did that for a long time. I tried to sell painting. These are all old school terms for how animation used to be done. But the point is, I was able to adapt. And then when things changed from 2D animation into CG animation, I was able to adapt to that because it was in the mind setup. I want to know it all. And even now, things are changing again with Unreal Engine. It's like, well, let me step up to the plate and let's see what's going on with that, because I want to keep abreast of motion graphics, learning different programs all the time, even though I don't have to. The worst thing that I think that can happen to someone in their professional career is that they get comfortable and they sit and do the same thing, and they reach what I like to call cruising altitude, which is they're making decent money, the hours are okay, they can balance their life goals with whatever family, loved ones, things you want to purchase with the time you have to spend in production. You can weather the downtimes, and then you don't get too burnt out from the high times. When things are up, you're doing well. When they crash, you're doing well. And then that is when you usually think, well, okay, then I can relax. I can sit back. Things are good. This is a time for me to feel like I can just relax and coast. That is when you should be getting ready for your next move, because that means that your next move is coming. When things are going too well, that means things are about to change. It's just the nature of the beast. I don't know if it's outside of entertainment, because I never worked outside of the entertainment industry. I worked I work as a professional teacher now, and it doesn't seem to be quite as crazy as that, but there's this lingering feeling that one day things will change. And I've seen it happen with different schools that close or that don't stay with the times, and they fall behind. And so I urge you to consider generalizing while you specialize, if that's a thing. So the denouement of that long-winded rant is that you specialize, but you keep your options open so that you have a number of different things that you can do. I don't think everybody can be a generalist. I just don't think everybody's wired that way. There are some people who are specific about one thing, and that's all they want to do. And so they need to just follow that. But for the rest of us, you need to keep your finger in a lot of pies, and that's how you're going to stay employable, and just keep abreast of what's happening in the business. So hopefully that answers your question. It's probably more than answers your question. But as you can see, I'm very happy to talk about stuff like that. I have a lot of experience with work in entertainment, and I'm happy to tell people things that might not seem obvious if you've never been in the entertainment business before. And by entertainment, I mean games. I mean movies, TV, commercials. That's something people don't think about. YouTube videos, live theater, performance art, books, music, anything that has to do with entertainment. I've dipped my toe in it and seen how it works in the real world. And I'm always happy to share my experiences with that because I loved it. And that's one of the reasons that I stayed with it so long. And if I'm not doing it so much now, I'm just doing it on my own time, but because I love teaching so much. But I did it for many years. And I say I'm semi-retired. It just means I might do it again someday. So. All right. So yeah, go ahead. Keep asking questions. I'm happy to answer anything. So my scene today is about the cat, O'Malley. But the bigger issue at stake is classic character takes. So what are classic character takes and why do we need to do them? Well, a take is basically a change of emotion. So I've got a character that's hand-drawn, and if it was in a graphic novel or something, I could do two panels. I could do one panel where the character is looking this way and just minding their own business. Then I'd show another panel immediately after that, right next to it, left or right, depending on which country you're reading in. And show a character going like this, being very quizzical about something. So starting over here, very neutral face, and then turning and looking like this. Oh, what's that? In animation terms, that becomes a character take, where you're doing a look that changes emotion. Now you can do a double take. Watch my headphones go flying, but it's like I'm looking over here and I go, what? I'm sure you've seen that if you've seen any really over-the-top comedies. I can also do it to the camera. So I am looking over here and I go, what? So that's a double take. And please take a recording of that and share it, make it go viral and make me look like a fool. But you get the idea. You could do triple takes. You can do a sort of standard Don Bluth-y again, it's another old school animator, but you take where the head's going up like this, so I'm looking at you and I'm like, oh, well, I really like that, and it's a way to get me from one emotion to another emotion. And the honest truth is that a lot of this stuff comes out of vaudeville acting. And vaudeville acting is where animation originally came from, because everybody watched theater in the old days. When I'm talking the old days, I mean like the turn of the century, in the 1900s, like going from the 1800s to the 1900s. Theater was the entertainment of the masses. It isn't so much anymore. Nowadays, we're not so much about theater as we used to be, because we've got this magic thing called TV, which gave way to the internet. But in the old days, there was theater, and in theater, there were people on a stage. I mean, you know this already, but just to make the point, there are people on a stage, and then there are people in the audience. And depending on how much money you paid, you're either really close to the stage or you're really far away from the stage. And the people in the back, even though they didn't pay that much, they still came to see a good show and they want to be entertained. So the people up on the stage in the theater, the actors, the performers, had to sell their acting all the way to the cheap seats, as they called it in the old days, in the back. The cheap seats in the back, they paid their money too. The people up on the balcony, they paid too. If you've ever been to theater and you've sat up in the cheap seats in the balcony or wherever, you know that the actors have to really over-emote, really overdo it. That's not something that has to happen quite so much anymore. It's more of an affectation now when you see theater, because we've got things that are mic'd, we've got screens that are capturing the action. None of that was possible. So actors had to scream and they had to over-emote and be really broad. Out of that comes the sort of acting that you see in classic Disney films like Pinocchio or even Bambi. Not so much Bambi because it was pared down, but certainly Snow White or something. You see a lot of over-the-top acting. And then that became a style that was the Disney look, and people tried to copy it and liked it, and it became a specific look that people felt like they wanted to emulate. Yes, classics like Chaplin. Charlie Chaplin's not using words, and so he has to show you what he's doing through pantomime, through acting. Pantomime acting is still a thing, but here's what happened. Over the years, acting styles have changed, and if you look at a movie from the 40s, you'll see even something that's very something that's obvious, like Casablanca, or maybe even get to the 50s and something like All About Eve, or think about Citizen Kane. Anybody who's studied film at all, you've been forced to watch that. Maybe you didn't like those films. But if anything, you notice that they act a little differently. They talk a little differently. Well, it's been a long time ago. Not that long, but it has been a long time. Well, things have changed. And now with 4K TVs, with high-speed internet, with huge screens, we don't have to do that over-the-top acting as much. And so that's why I'm going on and on about this, is by way of going back and showing you what takes are, what they've been, and then talking about what they might be soon in the future. So I'm going to show you some images now. And Kevin, oh good, I'm glad that helps. I'm glad to, like I said, ask me a question, we'll be here all night, but as long as it's helpful. But so now let's take a look at some things that were examples of character takes and why were they like this. One of the main examples, I'm just going to cover up my whole face and my screen, Tex Avery. So Tex Avery right now with, what was he, Dippy Dog or Deputy Dog or something like that. I can't remember this dog's name. Droopy, that was his name. So Droopy was in a bunch of cartoons with this wolf, and the wolf would get increasingly agitated and then eventually burst into parts, or his eyes would bug out of his head, or he'd scream and his tongue would come flying out. And that was to try and suggest to you that he's really, really agitated. In this cartoon, it's because the dog keeps appearing, even though he thinks that he's gotten rid of Droopy. Droopy just keeps showing up, and then by the end, you find out that there are a million Droopies, and they've just been tormenting the wolf just for fun. And he had a really funny voice, and he talked really slow, and wasn't that great. So, and I urge you to check these cartoons out if you're at all interested in animation, because this is the foundations of a lot of stuff. So Tex Avery was pushing things as far as physically possible and doing it for fun effect, because nobody had ever done it before. Nowadays, this isn't that big of a deal. We've seen stuff like this. But when Tex Avery did it, he was one of the pioneers. Nobody had made a character be so agitated that they actually flew into different pieces, which was a convention of animation that you could do. You couldn't do that with a live action person. You could now, and they explored that in the Mask movies in the 90s. But at the time, it was kind of revolutionary. But the point is that it was hanging off of vaudevillian acting. So vaudeville acting was people telling rubbish jokes and clowns, over made up, telling dirty jokes or whatever, and then they do these wild reactions like, "What? Your mother is this, or your father is that, or you're gonna do what? You lost your job," and then just going crazy. And so the cartoons were trying to mimic that by doing these over-the-top exaggerated takes, but saying, well, but what if we went even further? They're cartoons. We can push them and push them and push them. And that is exactly what Tex was trying to do. In each cartoon, he'd push it further and further until you really just couldn't push it any further at all. So that's Tex Avery. Another example is Bob Clampett. And so I brought this one in. I can't remember which cartoon this is. It's Daffy Duck. That giant eyeball is Daffy from the Warner Brothers cartoons, who has, again, become extremely agitated and as a result turned into a giant eyeball staring at the wolf from Grandma's house. There's a famous cartoon that you might want to check out. It's just surreal. It's so strange. Daffy Duck. Oh boy, now I can't remember the name of it. This is fun trivia. If anybody knows the name of this cartoon, the one where Daffy Duck becomes Duck Tracy. Maybe that's what it's called, is Duck Tracy. I don't remember. But anyway, it's Bob Clampett. And if you just type in Bob Clampett into a Google search, you'll see all sorts of crazy images of characters just morphing beyond surreal. It just absolutely becomes crazy how much these characters are mutated in the service of showing an expression that can't be expressed any other way. It's just, they're so unbelievably surprised by something, or scared of something, or in Tex Avery, in love with something, that they just start banging on their heads with hammers and hitting themselves against the table. And that is supposed to psychologically reflect their inner state of mind, but also to just do it because nobody had ever done it before. So next up, long time passes. And by the way, I never saw Bob Clampett cartoons or Tex Avery. I saw a couple of them when I was a kid. They didn't share them with us because they were just too strange to show to little kids after school, which is where I saw Bugs Bunny cartoons in the 70s or on Saturday mornings. But they were out there. And when I did eventually see them, I was just shocked at how really surprising they were, and still are to this day, Tex Avery and Bob Clampett. But a lot of people had seen them, and they were getting to the right age. They were starting to look back at their childhood. And so next up, in the late 80s, we got this thing called Roger Rabbit. And Roger Rabbit was specifically designed to appeal to people like myself, or maybe people a little older, who had grown up with Bugs Bunny cartoons and had maybe seen the influence of Tex Avery and Bob Clampett, but then wanted to take it one more step and make it kind of meta. And so Roger Rabbit, if you see specifically the cartoons that were used to illustrate Roger Rabbit's work, so in the movie Roger Rabbit, he actually behaves like a fairly normal cartoon character, but in the cartoons that he was supposed to have done as part of the film, films within the film, his shorts that he was in, they take it to such a ridiculous length that it was meta. And that's how it played in the late 80s to those of us who are familiar with the things that they were kind of satires of over-the-top 40s cartoons, which is what Roger Rabbit was both doing an homage to and doing a satire of. And so you get images like this, which are taken right out of Tex Avery, and yet they've changed it slightly. It's hard to explain. It's hard to describe it. You just have to kind of study animation to see this stuff. But they're taking Tex Avery and Bob Clampett and just adapting a little bit, ever so slightly, to make it new and fresh. And it worked like a charm. It was crazy successful. The film was huge. It's hard to explain today just how big Roger Rabbit was, but it influenced everything. Special effects, it revived animation, One of the things that revived animation in a 2D sense, there were a lot of people my age who were just waiting for something like that back in the 80s, and we got it. We got it in spades. And it was one of the things that really cemented for me that I wanted to be an animation person full time. It made it seem like it was possible. I had always wanted to do 2D animation, but until Roger Rabbit came along and I realized that, well, somebody had to make that thing, and a lot of people had to work on it. And I thought, I just really want to be a part of that. And so it was designed to appeal to people like me who had grown up with animation. Now, the last one I'm going to show is an example from a television show that came right after Roger Rabbit and was directly influenced by Roger Rabbit, and that's this. And so anybody who's out there watching right now, maybe you recognize this. It's been so distorted that maybe you don't, but this is an image, of course, from Ren and Stimpy, and Ren and Stimpy was once again taking the ideas that had come out of Tex Avery and Bob Clampett and then were meta-ized in Roger Rabbit, and then seeing how far that they could possibly take it. So if you look at this image from Bob Clampett and compare it, you'll see the difference. You'll see that there's a lot of similarity. Here's the giant eyeball with giant eyelashes. Here's the giant eyeballs with giant eyelashes. And that wasn't a coincidence. Here's the Roger Rabbit take. Here's a Roger Rabbit take. You know, it's not a coincidence. Everybody was looking at the same stuff, and they came up with this stuff deliberately. They were specifically trying to come up with, you know, the furthest reaches that you could possibly take exaggeration. And then you see that echoed today in things like Spider-Ham from the Spider-Verse movie, where they were doing really over-the-top exaggerations to try and make a point and capture a style. Now here's the cautionary tale. So the reason I was talking for a long time about the vaudeville acting styles that led to the animation acting styles is we're no longer anywhere near the vaudevillian stage of acting. Again, people who act that way in theater nowadays, they're doing it because it's an affectation. It's just a style that people expect to see. And a lot of people who work in 2D animation today may or may not, I'm not going to speak for them, but still be expecting a certain look because that's what they were raised on and that's how they think it's supposed to look. Along comes this thing called anime, which is something that a lot of people are very excited about, and which has to do with the reveal I'm about to announce, if you can just hang on a little bit longer, that it comes up with a different style that a lot of people have embraced and decided that that is how things are supposed to look. No, that smooth-looking, vaudeville-based, kind of over-the-top acting that happens in Disney films is not what some people of specific generations think is the best look. They're actually looking at the anime style and going, well, I was raised with that, and I was excited about that as a kid, and that's what I want to do for a living, and that's the look that I'm excited about trying to replicate when I take animation classes or when I study animation. When I'm talking about animation, I'm not talking about Disney, Don Bluth, or even some of the European stuff that was, or even Goblins, or the Irish studio that's going right now, still producing cool 2D stuff. What I'm talking about is that anime look, that Miyazaki thing, the Studio Ghibli thing, and it's all valid. That's one thing I just want to get that out of the way right now, is that the whole thing is valid, and there's nothing wrong with saying I like this and I don't like that. But if you really want to be a student of animation, if you want to be a professional of animation, then you need to understand that there's more than just the stuff that you like. I made that mistake early in my animation evolution of thinking, well, I just really liked the Don Bluth stuff, the video games, the Dragon's Lair, Space Ace, and I wanted to just do that. And I neglected the fact that the people who did those works, animation, they were fine artists first and then animators second. And so the same thing applies with anime, is if that is something that you want to do, then you need to be an artist first. And every animator I've known, no matter what style they work in, any animator I've known that was worth their salt, they were an animator first, and then they were applying a style. Like, some people use the word lens. I'm getting really sick of that word, but you know, looking through the lens of one's particular style but you come at it from the space of being a fine artist. Peter's animation, yeah, no problem. I just have been hinting that I'm going to drop some exciting information here pretty soon, so stick around. I'm going to talk about it very soon now. It's related to what I was just saying. So what I was talking about was I'm talking about animation takes today, and I'm going to start working here on an animation take scene that I've got set up for today, and I'm going to work on it for the next 2 or 3 weeks, see how long it takes to finish it. But the point of it all is that it used to be we were looking at takes that were based in these kind of over-the-top acting styles that you saw in vaudeville. So I'm showing images from those. The over-the-top take came out of vaudeville and then was used and done and done and done, and it's been done to death. It doesn't mean it's not still funny. It just means that now we have options. We don't have to rely on that. And if you want to see that stuff, it already exists. There's no reinventing animation takes that are crazy and over the top because it's been done. And if you do it, you're just copying people who had done it and probably did it better because it came out of something natural. Nowadays, I see a lot of people trying to capture things like Bugs Bunny cartoons, trying to reinvent Bugs Bunny for a modern age, and it just doesn't translate. The same way they reinvented Mickey Mouse when they made the video game. I don't remember what it was called. You guys probably remember what it was. It's like Super Mickey or something. And they kind of reinvented the look of Mickey. And now the cartoons you see, he and Minnie have got a different look. So I'm a firm believer that things shouldn't stagnate. That's why I started at the beginning talking about job specialization versus generalization. Is you need to keep moving. You need to keep going with the flow, even if it means it's something that you don't respond as much to. So I still live in this universe of the old school Disney style. I know a lot of people who used to like it. It's valid. I'm not saying it's not good. It's not something you should do. What I'm trying to convey is that there's a lot of stuff out there, and it's okay to like whatever you like. Just make sure you get a fine art background before you specialize in one thing, because that thing could change. So never mind, CG Spectrum. Well, glad to have you here, Peters. Welcome. All right, so I suppose, well, 2 things. First, I'm going to set up what I'm working on, and then I'm going to drop the bomb, the news that I've been promising I'll share with you. I don't want to put it off for too long, just in fairness. But I do want you to stick around because you're going to be excited about it. But all right, so I'm going to go into work mode and talk a little bit about this scene that I'm doing. And then I'll show it to you and show you what it's all about and what's been happening with it. And then I will start working on it some more. So first off, what was the goal? Well, the goal was, like I said, I've shown you pictures of O'Malley, but this is O'Malley, O'Malley the alley cat, for those who know. Somebody clearly in the chat knows about Aristocats. This character kind of came out of, again, it was Ken Anderson, who developed these characters. To the best of my knowledge, if you know better than that, then you get an A+, if you know who actually did the design, but I'm pretty sure it was Ken Anderson. And it has the look of like Jungle Book. You know, there was a specific style that they were doing at the time that was born both out of trying to keep things simple and get movies made, but also stay homage to the original films, where they really spent a lot of time and money working on these characters and making them look solid. So this is sort of an interzone for animation, where they were losing a lot of the quality that they did from the more expensive productions that didn't do so well, and Walt passing away, but wanting to retain that by moving into the 70s and beyond, trying to take animation to new places while still staying where it was. So anyway, so that's O'Malley. Again, came out of like a Jungle Book look, and sort of has the voice of Baloo the bear, but has the design style of like Bagheera, or one of the cats from Jungle Book. It's not an easy look, and so I really bit off a lot here to try and do this when this is not necessarily my specialty. I draw more in the Don Bluth style if I can even manage that, and then I draw in my own style, obviously. So I'm a little rusty, haven't done this for several years, but we'll see how it goes. Anyway, so these are some of the images. I used a lot of these images for reference when I was trying to come up with the initial animation for my character. So you'll see, hopefully you'll see that influence. People often ask me, well, how do I learn to draw in a specific style like this? And the answer is you trace it. You spend lots and lots of time tracing it, and you build your own model sheets. And in a studio situation, you will have model sheets for you if you work on a film like this, and then you trace those, and that's how you get to know the character. Many was the time we would Xerox the model sheet, images from the model sheet on the films I worked on at Disney or DreamWorks, the 2D animated films, and we would place a copy of the character from the model sheet, something that James Baxter had drawn or one of the other amazing animators, and just put it on the light table and put it one for one with ours, and then try to capture the look of it, because it's really hard. It's really hard to draw in the style of somebody else. No matter how many years you do it, you still have your own style that you've developed. And so there's no shame in just copying the work of others if you want to learn how they do it. It's also really important that you construct. And so I've done a little constructing on my scene, but not nearly enough. So I've just roughed the scene out for this week. I did it as quickly as I could in the interest of just having something available for the streams. I did 2 rough passes. I'll do 2 more rough passes, but we'll talk about that more in a sec. But anyway, this is just O'Malley. These are the images that I used. I'd use a lot more, but these are just some of the main images I used when I was trying to capture the look and feel of a specific character from a Disney film, and then try to retain as much of it as I could with my limited abilities as a former 2D animator who has not worked in the business for a really long time of doing this kind of thing. But I worked in CG for a long time, and you know, a lot of the stuff that I do, I don't even know that I still know how to do it, and then a lot of stuff I never was that good at to begin with. But anyway, so here's my scene. Before I show you the real thing, let me show you the rough stuff that I was doing. Just hopefully it makes you feel better. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But I started out with this. I started out with just real simple boxy shapes to try and get what a take is. I just need to kind of figure out what a take is. And so I'm doing something that's still probably a little bit over the top as far as takes, but it's a character who was looking one way and then ostensibly heard something like a dog barking in the neighborhood next door. And so turned to look, and then after having looked, kind of went, whoa, what's that? And that was it. And that's the whole thing. It's just one character doing a reaction. If I played at speed, I don't know if you'll even be able to see it, but you can see, you know, this is like the worst drawings that anybody's ever seen. Just based on trying to construct basic shapes and get the general idea down. After I did the body, then I added some arms to it. And I thought, well, let's, you know, have the arms doing a couple different things. Some of the arms kind of stay together, so it kind of goes like this. But they're not twin. They're not doing everything exactly together. And I just used myself for reference for this. I probably could have shot something that might have helped. But I just thought, I'll just act it out. I looked in the mirror, which is right next to me, right here. And I just kind of made sketches. I made thumbnail sketches of what the real thing would look like and just kind of mapped it out. And then this is me just going in and doing a rough pass. And then once I had the general timing of it mapped out, that's when I started going in here and doing, well, and then using some of the original drawings as reference too. But that's when I went in and started doing more tie downs and matching up with, trying to make this look like the real thing, like the real character. And so here's where I'm at the moment. So this is just a real quick, rough pass, down and dirty. It's still not really on model. It's close, but it's closer than it used to be, but it isn't. It's still, there's a lot of stuff that needs to be worked out. So what I'm going to do with the remainder of today is I'm going to add drawings that will flesh it out. At a certain point, after I'd kind of mapped out the general crux of it, I made charts, and I'll talk about that a little bit more as it becomes relevant. But the charts that I used were just designed to tell me personally, as I go back into my scene a long time later, well, what is the direction I was going. How did I want to do this? Did I want to do a halfway drawing between 9 and 17 and call it 11, and do another half between that and call it 10, and that would give me a certain spacing? Or do I do something like I have here at the end, where I'm just going to keep doing drawing after drawing, 36, 38, 40, 41 if I need to make sure that the thing eases out into a final pose. And so I started with the key poses, the first one, the last one, then I chose one. I'm pretty sure I chose one in the center. That one needs some work. It's a little rough. And then this is another one I did in the center of the scene. Actually, it's just a copy. And then fleshed it out with breakdowns in between, and then started doing some of the in-between stuff. That stuff's really rough. It's really looking rough. I'm gonna have to go back in there and fix that. I'll do that for next time, but for now, that one's a pretty scary looking drawing. But at least it's it's closer than the other rough was. It's a start, and it's giving you an idea of what the scene might look like if it were all colored in, and if it had a nice background and things. So that's what I'm going to do for today. Is I'm going to be working on this scene and filling in some of the rough in-betweens and things, and tying down some of the drawings that are a little too loose, in the effort of bringing it closer and closer to its tie-down pass phase, which will probably be what I show next week. And then I'll start cleaning it up and making it look nice and pretty, which is always the most time-consuming part, but it can really make or break a scene. So anyway, so that's the scene that I'm working on, and that's the explanation for why I'm working on it. So now I suppose I should probably get to the part where I announce my special announcement for today, and that is, well, I'm just going to go back to my wide zone. You can see how I'm trying to drag this out. So the special announcement for anybody who is interested is I've been given permission to talk about the anime class, or let's put it this way, anime influence version of the class that we do at CG Spectrum as official, that it's official, that you can sign up for it, and I'll tell you how in just a moment. So if you're interested in learning 2D animation, but with an anime sort of influence, with an anime bent, what we've done is we've hired somebody who works in anime in Tokyo, who's not actually from there, but anyway, so somebody who works in anime, who is going to be teaching our regular 2D animation. It's called diploma class. That means you go through all 3 terms with us, and so you have to pay for all 3 terms. So we have an introduction class. You can just pay for that and just do a one-off. And then we have the 3-term, 12 weeks each classes that we do. And we call it diploma when you take all 3 terms. And you pay for that, and you go 12 weeks, take a couple weeks off, 12 weeks, and then 12 weeks again, with 2-week breaks in between. And so if you want to do the animation diploma program with our special instructor that we've called in, who is teaching it with the perspective of an anime influence, because that's what she does for a living all day, and we're very lucky and very fortunate, very excited about having her teach this, then that is now going to be available for signing up. So anybody who wants to sign up for that, then it's now open. I've been hinting at it and teasing it, and we've been talking about it in other streams for the longest time, but we've officially been given the go-ahead. Now, there are some caveats to that. It isn't just, oh, I want to take it, and so I'm going to be taking it. The caveat is, number one, it's limited space. And so if you are interested in this, this is something I recommend that you get on really quickly, because it will fill up. As far as I know, it's already, I mean, at least in terms of interest, it's already full. So if you're interested, you need to make your voice known. How do you do that? Well, you can go right now and jump into CG Spectrum's website for the diploma. I'm going to give you that link, and you can sign up by saying, by applying for the class, which means you got to pay for it, and saying that you specifically want to do the anime class, that is what you're signing up for, is you want to sign up for the 2D animation diploma program with the anime instructor. Let's make sure that I got that straight. So here I'm going to put the link into the chat, So there it is. There's the link for the anime class. Now, before you go and do that, if that's something you're interested in doing, before you do it, just so you know, it's a limited class size, and it's also at a very specific time. So if you cannot make the time, you can't do the class. Ordinarily, just so you know, at CG Spectrum, we try to work within schedules of both our mentors and our students, and we try to adapt things so that everybody gets a fair shake. But in this case, because it's a special situation, our instructor is only available at a specific time, which ends up being, if I'm not mistaken, it's on, I think, Saturdays at 10 a.m. On Pacific time, or it's U.S. time. It's on Saturday mornings. So I'm going to double check that while we're still talking, but that's what I've been told. So let me just make sure that we've got that set up. So I apologize. It's Saturdays at 10 o'clock Japan time. So whatever that works out to be. So you'll have to do a little bit of conversion. I apologize. I don't have that ready for you right now. I was going to get that ready, but I don't. But just you just need to convert your time wherever you're at into Japan time, and that's 10 a.m. Saturdays Tokyo time. So convert that into wherever it is you are, and then that is the only time that we are offering that class. I believe we're going to have 2 sessions. I'll let you know if that changes, but for right now, that's our first session is available 10 a.m. Saturdays Japan Tokyo time. So that's what you're stuck with for now. And again, it's a limited class. There's only 4 positions available. So if it's something you want to do, I recommend that you go on the website and just start talking right now and say, hey, I was there first. And then they'll sort it out in the order that they've got them. And then we'll assign priority to people who can make the time or to pay first, or whatever. We're expecting that there's going to be a lot of popularity for this. And if you don't get in, don't feel bad. We're going to open this up and have more of these classes as we can wrangle people to teach them. But that's what we got for now. So anyway, that's my big announcement. I see a question. I didn't take the diploma and advanced diploma spectrum class to be job ready, like in Pixar Disney. That's a really interesting question. Let me come back to that. Let me finish off talking about my big announcement, but I will return to that question. So yeah, so that's my big announcement is that we have the teacher who's cut the big announcement. What is it? Well, so for JD's sake, just to reiterate, we have a mentor at CG Spectrum that we've wrangled in, who has very graciously not volunteered, we're paying, but who's going to be a mentor for us, who teaches, who works in anime in Tokyo right now. That is this person's full-time job. That's what she does for a living. We were able to convince her to teach for us. So she's going to be teaching our 2D based diploma program. That's the 3 terms, 12 terms each, with 2-week breaks in between. So again, just to read, the reason I'm saying that is I'm not pitching it. I'm just saying if you want to do this, you got to sign on for 3 terms. We do an introductory course, which is 12 terms, but we have a 3-term program, and that's the one she's teaching. So if you want to do it, you got to do that one, which is the link I gave. Now, for some people, you may not have gotten that link depending on what platform you're on. If you're interested, I can point you towards it. Just let me know in the chat if it's like, well, I don't see that. I can't link to it. But anyway, yeah. So JD, if you want to do that, I assume you don't. But thanks for asking. So it gives me an excuse to repeat it. Which is, yeah, so we have a special anime mentor who's going to be teaching our regular program. Just for the record, just making sure everybody's clear, anybody who's interested in this. This is our regular 2D animation program, which takes you through the basics of animation in a 2D environment using Toon Boom. And so you're still going to start with bouncing balls and ball with the tail and doing a walk cycle and all the things that you would do in any animation class. But the advantage to this is if you're excited about anime, if you want to know more about anime, if you want to be in the world of learning these things through the sort of the lens, again, I can't stand that word, but through the lens of an anime instructor, then now's your chance. And again, we've been hinting at this for months actually, but we're finally doing this. It starts February 1st, and like I said, it's going to fill up really fast. In terms of interest, it's already full. So if you want to do it, I recommend that you go to that link that I gave in the chat. If that link didn't work for you, you just need to go to cgspectrum.com, 2D diploma. Just type in CG Spectrum and 2D diploma for animation, 2D or 2D diploma or 2D diploma animation, and that'll take you there. It'll say apply now, and you can ask questions. You can apply for the gig then too, but make sure that you specify that you're interested in the anime version of this program, and make that very clear, because it's a new thing we're doing, and we're hoping to expand it, but it's still kind of in its infancy. We have not done this before. We're, like I said, very excited about doing it, but it remains to be seen. As far in terms of popularity, in terms of how many mentors we can get, how many hours we can get them to commit to. Remember, the CG Spectrum mentors, they all either have worked in the industry or are currently working in the industry, and ours is. And so, yes. Well, thank you, Peters. Thank you for staying, and hope you had fun, and good luck in your class. But anyway, so that's my big announcement. That's what I got for you today in terms of that, other than it's my friend Sherry's birthday, and happy birthday to Sherry. So everybody say hi and happy birthday to Sherry if you're still out there. But those are my big announcements. And so if you have any questions about that, number one, I would recommend going to the website and asking questions there. But if I can answer anything for you via chat, as far as my two announcements, including my friend's birthday and the fact that we are now opening it up to reserve a place for the anime instructor for our 2D program, just let me know. But yeah, that's my big announcement. So thank you. Thanks for being patient. And I hope some of you out there are able to get into the program if you're interested. And keep in mind, we've still got the regular 2D diploma program. So if you're not overly excited about anime, it's, again, still the same program. It's just a new teacher, new mentor who is going to be working with us and teaching the program. Just a little hint, she loves classical animation, which is kind of the Disney-ish stuff. But she is also excited, like me, about all forms of animation too. And then again, she works in anime. That's what she does for a living. So that's what she'll be teaching with, kind of the perspective of. Well, thanks, Sherry. Thanks for joining us. Have a wonderful birthday, and hope you had a great day today. And thanks for dropping by and saying hello. So, and thanks to everybody who's still here. So, all right. So now back to cats. I'm going to start working on this cat. I'm going to just be doing some rough in-betweening right now. But as always, you're free to pop in with anything at any time as far as anything you're interested in discussing. I will continue to ramble on and on about what I'm doing and talk about what the processes are that I'm working on. But that doesn't mean we can't talk about any old thing that you're interested in. So please don't be shy, as long as you're being civil and not using any naughty words or anything. We'll get along just fine. If you do those things, then I will make sure that you're gone. You can't comment anymore, so you don't want to do that. But anyway, so here is the work that I've done on the cat so far. And so when you're doing animation of this kind, rough animation, whether it be anime or anything else, you do it in passes. What's a pass? Well, a pass is the first pass that I did was very, very rough. This is now just mildly rough. Well, maybe a little more than mildly rough, but this is a pretty rough pass. And now I'm starting to flesh this pass out with more drawings, and then I'll go in and I'll tie it down, and I'll make sure that once I've got a lot of drawings in here, that the character stays consistent. So There's some funny things happening with its face in here. It's pretty lazy drawing on my part, but I'll fix all that up later. And then stuff with anatomy, there's some color sep stuff that's not quite worked out yet. So I'll be kind of fixing that stuff as I go, as well as working with the charts that I set up for the scene. After I looked at my initial animation, then I kind of made a chart system that said, well, this is what I expect to have happen with my drawings. Some people will tell you that you can set the charts up in advance. Great, if you can do that, if you already know ahead of time what you want to do. But for my purposes, it isn't until I really flesh my animation out, that I begin to know what I want to do with it in terms of charts. And so I've set these up. I reserve the right to change my charts at any time. I will be following myself up, so I just need to keep it straight so that when I do my own cleanup pass for this, then I can keep everything straight. But if you've never encountered one of these silly chart things before, what you're basically looking at is circles mean that the circle means that, well, that basically means it was a key. So if it's got a circle around it, then it was a key. And key drawings are important because those are the poses you spend the most time on. I have the worst handwriting of anybody on the planet, but it's important that you stress those drawings. Key poses, they're like snapshots of your scene. The key pass that I have right now, which is keys with a few breakdowns, 4 breakdowns, it should represent the entire scene. I should be able to look at these and go, I know what's going to happen in this scene. Once it's more fleshed out, I have kind of a sense of what it's going to look like when it's done. And so when I went and charted this out, I was looking at the key poses, the ones that tell the story of the scene, and then determining, well, what happens in between. In this case, I'll just start with an easy one. The cat goes from this pose, which is really crummy looking pose, but I'll fix it later. Goes from this pose to this one to this one. It's starting to slow out. The cat slows out from here to here and holds on this last pose for a nice long time. And so I need the character to slow down. And slowing down means basically I go from this pose to one that's halfway between 34 and the last one. And then I go halfway between that again and halfway between that again. So these full drawings here, they represent halfway between individual poses. And so that's the purpose of the chart, is just so I have a record of the direction that I was going with my scene. So I can follow myself up later. So, well, the question was, yeah, I did not forget your question, Kevin, actually. Yeah, no, actually, I managed to kind of forget your question, but it's an ongoing question. You know, what do you need to be able to get a job in the industry? Well, there are lots of things that you're going to need. The 2 most important things that you'll need are talent and drive. And so when it comes to getting a job, my understanding, having worked in the industry for a really long time and having worked with a lot of students over the years, is that the ones who survive are the ones who really can't think of doing anything else. I have somebody, a dear friend, and JD points out something really important, which is blackmail. And you're only partly joking. When you're talking about live action film, directors take heed, or wannabe directors take heed, blackmail works. So it's maybe one of the reasons I didn't become a director, is I didn't have the guts to try my hand at it. Nah. There are all sorts of avenues to get the success that you want. I prided myself on never doing anything underhanded to get into whatever I wanted. And everything that I got was above board. It was miraculous in some cases, and I've told those stories before, I'll tell them again, you can stick around long enough. But everything that I got legitimately. I got it because I deserved it. There are some people who will tell you that there are other reasons I got things. If that's the case, I'm not aware of them. I worked really, really hard, and I tried to be a really good person, and I had a modicum of talent. Now, getting into the industry, it's, I don't know, Willy Wonka said something like 50% hard work, 50% perspiration, 50% wow, 50% perspiration, 50% inspiration, and 18% butternut cream or something like that. To which somebody says, well, isn't that 118%? And he goes, precisely. Um, but what it really means is it's a combination of luck and skill. And so skill doesn't do you any good if you're not available. If people can't see your work, if they don't see you out there, then there's no way that anyone will be able to know what it is you can do for them, for their production, or just in general. And we find that increasingly happening in the world where we have YouTube and Vimeo and 5,000 things to check out on streaming platforms. Is it's getting, well, it was always hard. Trust me, it was always hard. But it seems like it gets harder every day to stand out and to make yourself known. And yet every now and then something happens, like a friend of mine who did this Lucas the Spider video, and where it just took off like a shot. And it's good, there's no question about that, but there are a lot of good things out there. And why do some things make it and some don't? So if the same thing comes back to you with your career, and you want to be successful, you want to stack the deck in your favor. So the best way to stack the deck in your favor is, while you're waiting for your big break, keep doing what you love and keep loving what you do. And so, can classes qualify you to be to get a job? Maybe they can. I mean, there are some schools that have job placement departments. There are some jobs where they'll say, hey, we'll take you on as a trainee. We have, like CalArts has an association with, or used to have an association with Disney, and they kind of feed off of each other. We need new talent. Well, we have talent who needs jobs. So there is something to be said about that. But what I think of it as is your training while you're waiting for your break. And so that when you get your break, you'll have everything stacked in your favor, and you'll be able to say, oh, you want somebody who can do a cat? Then I can do cats, because I've had all this time while I was in school drawing cats, for example. Not me personally, but whatever it is, just an arbitrary example. So I don't know that any school on the planet can promise you that if you do the assignments and you get good grades and you're a good person, that you're guaranteed to get work. The world just doesn't work like that in general, but it really doesn't work like that in entertainment. The way it works in entertainment is somehow, miraculously, it happens every day, you get your in, you get your foot in the door, you get your arm in the door, and by a combination of being a really cool person and having a great work ethic and having a lot of work available to show when somebody asks, do you have anything that you can show? And then a little bit of help from the universe, whatever that means to you. Good luck, spiritual stuff, personal fortitude. The combination of all those factors separates those who tried from those who didn't try at all. And then inside that concentric series of circles is those who tried and had some success, then some who had a lot of success, then some who got all the success they ever wanted, and then those who got success that was actually really notable. It just, the circle keeps getting smaller and smaller as you get closer to the center, because not many people fit inside of there. So by taking classes, you're stacking the deck in a number of ways. Number one, it keeps you from getting stagnant. So you're evolving, you're still doing things. Number two, it's social. By meeting me as an instructor, I'm not personally going to guarantee you I can help you get a job. I don't help anybody get a job. It would be unethical. But I can tell you things that I know are happening in the industry. Any instructor could. Other people in chats like this can tell you what things that are happening out there in the universe. It's like, oh, well, have you tried Toon Boom? Oh, did you hear about this thing called Unreal Engine? Oh, do you know that so-and-so is hiring soon? Or that Netflix is this slate of cartoons and they're going to need people to work on them. So it keeps you from being stagnant, it keeps you evolving and moving forward. And while you're doing that, you're learning skills and you're practicing. A lot of things that you need to know are just general understanding things. Like, you cannot be an animator unless you know about the 12 principles of animation. What's that? Take my class and find out, or take an animation class and find out. But to be an animator, you have to have certain specific, what they call, it's another dopey word, but hard skills. Soft skills are, well, I watch a lot of cartoons, and so I feel like I understand how cartoons look and how they should feel. And I can talk about it because I have seen every single anime, every single series of Castlevania or whatever's out there right now. Those are soft skills. Those are things that are kind of like in your head. Hard skills are, I know how to draw specific characters from memory and not even using a model sheet. I could draw you any character from that series or from Disney or whatever without using any reference, whatever, because I've studied it so much. I've drawn it all my life. I've drawn this character or that. And so soft skills, hard skills, combination of those mixed with a great personality, excellent work ethic, connections with people who can help you get a job when you need one, or can tell you what's going on in the working world, and then just a little bit of luck. And as a famous president once said, I think it was Jefferson, I found that the harder I worked, the luckier I got. I say this all the time, and I always misquote who it's from. But it's really true, and it worked for me. Is I've never stopped working, even when I've got a lot of free time. What do? I create things. I make projects. I animate, draw, paint, make music, all the things that I love to do. And then it never surprises me later when I find that I can use the things that I learned because I had all these creative projects I wanted to do. And by the way, Kevin, it's like these aren't new questions. These are things that I talk about all the time. This is why I became a teacher, is so that I can help people like you or anyone else who's out there move a little more quickly than if you were just trying to discover this stuff on your own. There are certain things that are hard and fast rules, which are you must have a good work ethic. You must get out there and mingle with other people. I don't mean literally, in a figurative sense. Online, you need to be in social groups or following specific social groups where things are happening that you're interested in, which you should be doing already anyway. You must draw if you want to learn how to be an animator who draws for a living or who designs things, and on and on and on. It goes on like that. But it's stuff that you may not know unless you really think about it or unless somebody tells you. And so the combination of all those things, that's how you get a job. To answer your overall question, is you do all those things. I have said many times I felt like I was extraordinarily lucky. Every time I thought I was at the end of my rope and was not going to be able to get a job again, all of a sudden, out of the blue, an opportunity came. Well, what that opportunity was, something that had been out there all along, but I just wasn't placed to see it because I either wasn't looking or was just not in the right headspace. And then when I was in the right headspace, all of a sudden, ta-da! It seemed like it just came out of the ether. And it's really funny too, because there's this sort of when you wish upon a star attitude with a lot of people I know in the Disney world, and it's sort of a trap. It's like this idea of, well, if you just wish on a star, that's all you got to do. It's like, well, no, you got to do a little bit more than wish on a star. You actually have to work, and you have to prove that you're somebody who's willing to work and work really hard if you want to be the kind of person who is granted success for whatever it is that you want to do with your life. So anyway, so I hope that helps. I mean, and I hope it's actually inspirational. One of the things that I like to do is I like to speak from a place of encouragement, even as I talk about the reality of situations, rather. The reality can be kind of scary at times. It's like, well, for a long time in the probably from about 2001 on, maybe it's more like 2003 or 4, 2D animation went away, and a lot of people got very anxious because that was their living. That's what they did for a living. That's all they ever wanted to do for a living. And suddenly, out of nowhere, you got these executives saying, well, we don't want to do this anymore. We want to focus just on CG animation, and there's no more room for 2D. And so all the 2D artist friends that I knew were just paralyzed with fear. It's like, well, but this is all I do. This is what I was born to do. It's what I know. Well, I have a friend, sorry to say this earlier, I got distracted, but I have a friend who said, without question, that was what she was born to do, was to do 2D animation, and specifically the sort of Disney style that that we were all doing in the 90s. And guess what? That's what she does. She does storyboard revisions for a company. I believe it's DreamWorks, but don't quote me on that. But she does still do what she always did, and she does it because she loves it. And nobody was going to tell her that she couldn't do it. So I think there's a little bit of that to do with success. Maybe it's naivete. Maybe there's a part of myself that's so oblivious to what the odds were that I never even took them into consideration. I've heard that said before. People have tried for years to try and figure out, well, what is the magic that leads to good luck and good fortune. My parents were avid gamblers, and they would win some, they'd lose some, and I think if they really had thought about it, they'd think, well, that's just kind of the way it goes for everybody. But I got extraordinarily lucky gambling. One of the first times I ever did it in earnest. I won thousands of dollars, and then I just stopped. And I said, well, I don't think it gets any better than that, and it really wasn't that fun for me in the first place. And as a result, my parents were convinced that I had some lucky, like I was born with a collar on my head, as they used to say. And it's not really true. It's just I watched what was going on around me, and I said, well, if I ever do win something, I'm not going to go and try to keep winning. I'm going to take my spoils, as they say in pirate terms or whatever, and I'm going to go. And it's like, I won. Great. I don't want to keep playing. And I think that there's something to be said about that in the world of entertainment as well, of just knowing what it is that you want and sticking to it and being a little bit naive, like you don't even realize that you couldn't win. It didn't occur to me that I could not win, that I would lose all my money. I just thought, oh, it'd be great if I won. And I just stuck at it for a little while, and I won. And I just went, awesome. All right, great. See ya. And maybe there's a little bit of that to success in your endeavors as well. That's a little bit out there, so I don't want to go too far down that road. In terms of concrete, just prepare yourself for that moment when you get a chance, so that when you do get your chance, then you're ready to take it. And I've seen a lot of people who didn't succeed at whatever it is they started out with because they just weren't prepared. And somebody like me even would come along and say, hey, you know what, we could really use someone who does X, Y, or Z. And they'll shake their head sadly and say, yeah, I just don't do that. That's just not something I do. And that tells me it's something they don't really want to do. They're not that interested in it. And so it's no big surprise that they wouldn't end up doing something they don't want to do outside of work. For me, a lot of the time, it just comes down to time. And so another question is something I don't maybe talk about enough, but it's like, how do I balance my schedule in a way that I can, something like Kevin, like you said, I'm thinking of changing my careers. Well, I've got a job already, and I need to be dedicated and focused in order to be successful at that, so I can continue to make a living while I pursue other things. How do I balance those? And that's something that everybody has to answer for themselves. No one person will ever be able to tell you what the secret to that is. It comes down to how much something is worth to you. I can't tell you how many people I've known over the years who decided that they were going to be the next Steven Spielberg or Quentin Tarantino or J.J. Abrams or whoever, and that it was worth bankrolling everything they had for the opportunity, meaning mortgage on their house, getting into trouble with their spouse, and neglecting familial duties in order to pursue their desire to be a film director or animation, doing some major project. And I don't mean this to sound harsh. I don't mean it to sound cynical or say that you shouldn't do that yourself, but I've never known anybody who succeeded at that. For everybody who is like Rodriguez, is his name, Tarantino's buddy, they worked on films together. But for everybody like Rodriguez who kind of made a student film and it got a lot of attention and he got a career out of it, there are hundreds of thousands of people who did just the opposite, who banked everything on the film and lost everything on the film that they just felt they had to complete. And so I would urge you not to be the type of person who is willing to bank everything on one dream. I think one of the reasons I may have survived as long as I did in the industry of entertainment was because I was as freewheeling as it comes in terms of dreams. But, oh, by the way, hey, Jordan, Happy New Year to you. Sorry, little lagging behind a little bit here on the chat. But yeah, Happy New Year and welcome back. Nice to see you again. But yeah, so I was always very aware of the fact that you know, I had limited resources and I didn't want to run through those resources. I didn't want to be the type of person who lost my house because I bankrolled everything on my idea. And I think part of the reason I knew not to do that was because I had made films when I was a kid. I made Super 8 films in my backyard with my friends. And I think I figured out pretty quickly that I wasn't really maybe that good at it, that I had a lot of passion for it and I did it a lot and I just kept doing it because I just wanted to tell stories. But ultimately, I don't believe that I had any talent as a filmmaker, or at least not enough to and I didn't love it enough. And the combination of those two things made me really reassess how much I really wanted it in the first place. And I came to the conclusion that I guess I didn't really want it all that badly. I had a modicum of success making shorts. I took them about as far as anybody could expect to take them. I went to film festivals and I did get some accolades for things here and there. But I just didn't see that the results I was getting was worth the amount of work that they took, and I just wasn't having enough fun with it. And so I dropped it and I decided to focus on other things. And as a result, found myself with a very successful career and very happy. And still to this day, I don't regret a thing in terms of, you know, oh, do I wish I would have gone a different direction. No, I went exactly in the direction I always wanted to go in the first place, and now have the ability to do all sorts of things that I want to. So, so yeah. So the lesson is just don't risk more than you can afford to lose when it comes to gambling on your dream, because you're probably not going to win everything. The odds that you're going to be one of those people who create something that changes your whole career around, slim and none. And even the people that have been very, very successful, wildly successful, probably didn't hit it as easily as they made it seem. A person who is successful gets good at not showing the cracks. And I say this a lot. I had somebody tell me early in my career, he says, I want to make it look easy. And he did. He made it look like it was an effort to do the work that he did. But I saw him late at night working and neglecting other things so that he could pursue his dreams. I'm not really sure if he attained all the dreams that he set out for himself. I suspect he may have done like I did and decided at a certain point, okay, I've gone far enough. I've done a lot of really cool things and I don't need to keep going for more and more and more. I know what my limits are and I know what my goals are and I've attained them, so why be greedy? There's something to be said about, you know, focusing on things in your life that are healthy and not always, I don't know, trying to get richer or something. People who've seen the film Scarface, this was a big influence when I was young. I always thought, it's like, well, you know, he just went too far. They say he pursued the American dream. Well, yeah, and then he kept going. But then I had people argue with me and say, no, that's what I want to do. I want to just keep going and going and pushing for more. So there's an old reference for you. It has nothing to do with anything, but we talk about movies sometimes. But the point is that you're focused. And the people that I know who are focused and talented and they're good people, just they're conscientious and thoughtful, they've been very successful and continue to be successful even when things change. And that's part of what I talked about earlier today, was the fact that change is inevitable. And you want to be one of those people who rolls with the changes and doesn't get stomped on, trounced when things change. It's really scary to find yourself in a situation where you were really happy and doing really well, and then everything changes, and suddenly you're either out of a job or you have to reinvent yourself. Now, I've reinvented myself, I think I figured 5, maybe 6 times. Consistently reinvented everything, meaning I lost my job, I lost my friends, I lost family member, everything that I defined myself and my personality, even at one point, everything I defined myself by, I had to give it up. And it was really scary and really, there's no way to describe those feelings, and I don't want you to think about that too much, but I'm living proof that you survive it, and it makes you stronger and it makes you better. And so embrace change. Don't be afraid of it. Don't run away from it. If something looks kind of scary because it's new and different, that's probably a good sign. And that goes for technology as much as anything else. But in the case of animation, getting back on topic, animation styles have changed a lot, specifically in the past several years, 10 years or so. There have been some game changers that have said, hey, this is a new way of thinking about animation, whether it's CG, three-dimensional stuff, or if it's more in keeping with hand-drawn stuff. It's like there are new ways of doing this, and people are loving it, and you're either going to move with the changes, or else you're going to get left behind and not be a part of what happens next. And whatever happens next is going to be really exciting, so you want to be part of that. So anyway, so those are just some thoughts on change. Riz Animation says, do you use reference? Well, in this case, yes. Let me just answer that question very upfront. Instead of going off on a ramble about it, yes, reference is essential. Reference makes the difference between the good animation that you see in movies and shows and the amateur stuff that you see posted on YouTube or in not particularly successful entertainment. You must use reference. Let me underline that here. Let's just make this big. Use reference. See, I told you I had the worst handwriting of anybody. Always. Use it for everything. Use it for your two-dimensional art. Use it for your three-dimensional art. Use it for motion graphics. Use it for everything. You take from the real world and you filter it through your personal computer, which is up here in your skull, hopefully, and put that out in your own specific way. And that is kind of the foundation of art. And the thing is it doesn't mean you can't play and just use things from your brain. You have a reference library in your brain already, and it's there to be drawn upon. And after a certain point as an artist, there are certain things that become what I like to think of as stock images, kind of like Shutterstock or whatever. It's like, oh, image of a cat. Well, if you've been drawing many years, you don't need to use reference every time you draw a cat because you've been studying them enough. Now it goes away. Like I said, I'm living proof that my style has really gotten clunky over the years because I don't work in it anymore. I'm not doing this 24/7 like I used to. So my style is kind of suffered as a result. But when you're really serious about this stuff, when you're working at it 24/7, you do build up a stock of, like I used to be able to draw hands in 5 seconds and just knock it out. I don't even do it anymore, but it's like I build a brick, and based on that, then I'd stick wires out of the brick for whatever the finger pose is supposed to be, and then use coils to represent the volume for those particular poses that I've got the fingers in, and then put straights against curves. And I also used to put knuckles in, if I remember right, and then straights against curves, and then fill in anything that's overlapping, and voila, eventually I would have a hand that was pretty nice. Again, like I said, I'm really out of practice with this stuff, but I don't draw all day for a living anymore, but that was the basics of it. That was just the sort of that's just one example of something that I would just do so many times. I could draw a hand in any pose necessary. I would just do it for fun. I would try to find the most ridiculous hand poses, like something like this, foreshortened, right? So what if your hand is shaped like that? How do you draw it? And I could do that. I would just practice it. And after a while, I got a stock kind of folder in my head of hand shapes. And I didn't really need to go in and make sure that I was using reference every time I drew a hand, because I'd drawn hands so many times that I just didn't need to reference them. But while you're still learning and developing your style, you must use reference, must use reference, and should make a habit of keeping a reference library available of images that you can draw from if you need anything. So I always comment on R. Crumb. He was watching the documentary of R. Crumb was the first time I really understood how important reference is, because he had a stock library of reference that he would use again and again and again. So he drew a lot of telephone poles. Well, he didn't make them up out of his head. He actually was using reference that he found, and because of that, he was able to really knock out some beautiful drawings. I mean, he was a fine artist first, R. Crumb, even though he did those very grotesque 60s underground comics that he was so infatuated with doing. But anyway, so yeah, so reference is really, really important. Do not reference Chris Elliott's hand from Scary Movie 2. You have to refresh my memory with that one. I remember Chris Elliott was in it. I don't remember what his thing was in that. It's funny, I haven't thought about that for a while. I believe there's another Scary Movie coming out, if I'm not mistaken. Somebody told me recently. But we'll just take JG's advice and do not use Chris Elliott's hand from Scary Movie 2 for reference. But yeah, you should always have your own reference library that you build up of things that you know you're going to need when you're either doing storyboards, that's a good example, or when you're if you're a painter, if you like to do digital painting. I'm sure my friends at CG Spectrum who do concept art could vouch for that. It's probably not a bad idea to go online and find examples of things you really, really love and try copying them. And then that's a form of reference. Now, you can't use that stuff to get a job, so it's negligible how much time you want to spend on something like that when you can't use it to get employment. It's a lot of work for something that's just a copy, but I did it in high school all the time. I would copy album covers and things with the goal of just having fun. And by doing it, I learned a lot. Learned a lot about shading and dark and light, and even a little bit about anatomy and proportion, which is the number one thing that you need to understand if you want to do anything in the visual arts with human figures. So to make some practical application of stuff I've been talking about, tie it up a little bit. Let's say, I really want to work in the anime style. And so what I do is I copy my favorite characters and I draw them those poses, and I draw over and over and over again. Well, here's what I always tell my students is the people who came up with those poses, they knew how to draw from live action, and they would draw things with the look of live action. They knew how to draw like crazy, the people who set that stuff up. And if they are actually drawing in a very specific style, they've applied that style, but they knew how to draw from real life first. And so if you're kind of circumventing, if you're going around that process, you're denying yourself the knowledge that you would gain if you didn't do that. And as a result, you're not going to be as talented. It's the same thing as learning to play by ear, which I did on piano, and then not knowing things like scales and rhythm and timing and how to read music. Well, I eventually learned how to read music because I wanted to evolve as a musician, and I'm so glad I did, because I wasn't evolving otherwise. And it took years and years of practice before I felt it's like, okay, I don't really have to keep practicing scales. If I'd wanted to be a serious musician, I would have continued with that and practicing scales and learning different forms of musicianship. But I really just wanted to get by. I wanted to be able to just play for fun, and the other stuff would have been kind of lost on me, and I didn't get that much out of it. But the same thing with art is if you're a serious student of art, then you'll be a student of art for your entire existence. And there will never come a time when you're just like, okay, I'm done. None of the masters who've made it would tell you otherwise. They're the most humble people on the planet because they know there's always more to learn. Even if you find yourself in the position of being a guru, which some of my friends have, they'll still tell you, it's like, well, I'm nothing compared to this other person. And I think that that's a really healthy attitude and something that everybody could benefit from keeping in mind, is that the goal was never to be a master in the first place. The goal was to have a rich and fulfilling journey of it, and while you're learning this stuff and exploring it. And then at a certain point to start paying it forward to the next generations and all the things that you learned, so that as you're walking back down the path, you can give it to people who are coming towards you, walking towards you on the path. Which again, this is what I do this stuff for. I mean, I also do it because I make a living at it, but which is a wonderful thing. But one of the reasons I love being an instructor so much, being a teacher, whatever, the reason I love it so much is because I love being able to share all the stuff that I learned and that I was taught by people who were mentors to me, and share it with people and see the success that they got out of it, and enjoying their success as well. So yeah, getting back to the original question, which was reference. Yeah, reference in all things. Everything you do, you should use some form of reference. In this case, like I said, the reference that I used was drawings of the cat that I just cobbled together from various sources, and then the action itself was something that I just kind of did in the mirror and then made thumbnails for, which is how they did it in the old days. And I wanted to kind of stay true to the spirit of the old days and just see how much of it I could do classic analog style. But like I said, right now what I'm doing is kind of busy work. I do this stuff because it's easier to talk while I do this. If I'm getting into more serious stuff, like the next time you see this scene, it's going to be a lot more fleshed out. It's going to probably be a lot more model, hopefully, and I won't have to make any apologies for it. But until that time, I'm just doing stuff that's easy to do online. And one of those things is just kind of do rough breakdowns of a scene that's already in progress. So anyway, but excellent question about reference. Yeah, just everybody should use reference all the time. It's your friend. It's not something to be afraid of. And it's funny that sometimes I will encounter people who don't want to use reference because they think either it's cheating or they just don't think it's as fun. And to those, I would say it's a lot more fun because it saves you a lot of work. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can actually climb on the shoulders of people who were there before you and learn from their mistakes and not waste time making those mistakes yourself. And one of the things I will say, I mean, I feel like I'm among friends here, so I can say this, but one thing that I will say is, you know, a film like Aristocats was made on the cheap in terms of Disney. Compare it to, say, Sleeping Beauty, which came, what, like 10 years earlier. And what you'll find is that Sleeping Beauty is just about as flawless as a 2D animation film could get in that era, at the end of I think the 50s. It was like 1950. It's just as state of the art. It's for a film of that time, it's state of the art. Even comparing it to live action films, it's state of the art. It's kind of like Fantasia was made around the same time as Wizard of Oz, And if you put one of the best scenes from Fantasia up against the best stuff in Wizard of Oz, and there's a lot of cool stuff in both that still holds up today and is still eerily interesting. Thinking like in Wizard of Oz where the flying monkeys are flying past and the witches going fly, fly. Came up in a meme lately. I'm not going to go there, but definitely still around. Then you look at that and compare that to maybe the lava scene in Fantasia where the dinosaurs were created in Fantasia. So it's like Fantasia is so ahead of its time, it's not even, you almost can't even talk about it. It's hard to put into words just exactly how incredibly ahead of its time it was, and that people still use that as a reference for things like effects animation. And in some ways, things just haven't been taught that were done in that film because they were so dedicated to it. It's funny, getting off on several tangents all of a sudden, but we're getting to the end of another stream, so it's my prerogative, right? But it's just funny, I was there when they were creating Fantasia 2, or Fantasia, what was it, 2000, 2001? It kept changing. Every year they'd put it off, and they would call it Fantasia 98, Fantasia 99, 2000, 2001. But with each iteration of it, what I noticed is they still hadn't matched the original, which was done in the 40s. And I think a lot of the reason that they were so successful in the 40s is that they were real artists, really working to expand on the craft of art, and they were not thinking in terms of, well, how do we knock out another blockbuster? I'm not dissing anything about Fantasia 2000 or whatever, or the need to make films that make money, or that's not the point at all. But just in terms of the amount of, and there was a lot of love went into Fantasia 2000, or 2000, whatever it was, Fantasia 2. A lot of love went into that thing. I know I was there, and I know the people who worked on it. But again, hold up Fantasia's fire scenes, lava scenes, against anything that was done in Fantasia 2. And it's shocking just how much it still is pioneering today. And that's because a lot of love and sincerity went into it. So to keep that in mind too, do your work for the right reasons. Do it because you love it. Don't do it because you're trying to make a quick buck. There's nothing wrong with a quick buck, and there's nothing wrong with making a quick buck, but ask yourself, do you really want to be that person who's known for that? That's what your stamp is, oh, well, this person is the Ed Wood of animation and is able to knock out a short or a feature animated film that sells on streaming services for 50 cents or is free. And that's what your contribution to the world was. There's nothing wrong. I mean, if that's what it is, it's what it is. But if you're still in the planning stages, you're still trying to map out your career and think about what it is you want to accomplish. Dream big, aim high, and then you can always come back down to earth later. So just some food for thought. We got about 15 minutes left. If you have anything that's you've just been burning to ask or talk about in terms of animation stuff related to today's conversations we've been having, now would be a great time. I just want to reiterate, in case anybody's just joined us, that my big announcement for the day is that we've opened up the anime course. It's not an anime course. I don't want anybody to get a misunderstanding about that. We are teaching our regular diploma animation course at CG Spectrum with a mentor who works in anime, and will be teaching it with the understanding that they're going to be offering tips and tricks for anybody who's interested in that sort of thing, who specifically wants to focus on that. But the class itself is still just a basic 2D animation industry driven class, a class where you learn about the basics of 2D animation as they relate to how could I get a job in the animation industry doing things like working at Netflix or working in anime if you want to work in Tokyo, for example. Somebody who does actually work there, who works on anime films, has graciously accepted our invitation to mentor students for us, and we've got a few slots open for that, but you better hurry because it's going to go fast. If you're interested, I'm going to put that link up again right now that we're getting to the end of the class. You need to go to the CG Spectrum website, which is basically cgspectrum.com. I'll just put it up here, and look for the 2D animation diploma program. You want to apply for that. You want to ask questions about it and say, hey, I'm interested in the anime course. And again, it's not an anime course necessarily. It's our 2D animation diploma course, but it's being taught by someone who works in anime in the industry and is going to be teaching with tips and tricks of that particular discipline in mind as she goes. And so if you're interested, get them while they're hot. There's only a few positions, and you must be able to take the class and you'll need to look this up because I didn't, sorry, I'm doing 20 things at once, but it will be taught at 10 a.m. Tokyo time on Saturdays. And it goes for 12-week terms, 3 terms, 2 each. That's what you pay for, that's what you get. And that will be taught by our instructor who works in anime in Tokyo, but is, again, graciously agreed to teach some of our students. And it's a new program. We are just getting started with it. We'll see how it goes. We're going to try to expand it. So if you don't get in this time, take heart. Don't feel too bad. We're going to try and keep it going. We are beta testing it, if you will, testing it out with the first group of students, and we'll see how things go from there. But if this is something, if you've been following these streams and you've been waiting for that, it's official. You can go sign up for it now, or try to sign up for it. So good luck. Last question from Kevin. Thanks for your questions, Kevin. It's fun. So don't feel bad. Advice for beginners starting animation to learn fast, get a job quickly, or things you wish you knew when starting out in animation. Advice for beginners, or things I wish I knew. Things I wish I knew that are obvious. The obvious things are you must practice. You must have a body of work that proves that you know how to do what it is that you want to do. When I was getting started, I had dipped my feet into it a little bit. I had a drive for it, but I didn't have a lot of work to show that I could do it. And one of the reasons why was because technology didn't allow for us back then. We didn't have the tools that you guys have now today with computers. There were no computers when I started out, at least not commercially available. And so I wish I'd had more that proved that I was interested in animation and that I had explored it. I look at some of the things my friends did, my peers in the industry, and they were clearly already doing stuff even though they didn't have all the tools at their disposal. And I kind of let that stand in my way. And so I wish I would have. So number one advice is make sure that you really do love it and prove that you love it by doing it even though you aren't working in the business right now. Take classes, experiment on your own, get Toon Boom, play with it. If you can't afford an expensive class, take a cheap class. I took lots of classes at community college for just for $10 a pop, just so that when I was learning CG animation, just so that I would stay relevant, stay moving, keep moving forward. So have a body of work that proves that you're interested. And then next thing is things I wish I would have known, that you must communicate with people. You must have peers. You have to go onto social media. We didn't have that when I was young, but you have it now. You have tons of it now. You have to go into social media platforms and make yourself known. Put your work out there. Get it criticized. Get ripped to shreds for not doing a good job, and then do better next time. And keep going. And don't let anybody tell you to stop. If it's something you really want to do, just keep at it. Other things I wish I would have known when I was starting out was that persistence is 99% of everything. I know some of the most untalented people in the world who worked in animation because they were just persistent. They just kept at it. They loved it so much they had to find a place for them eventually, and so they did. And they set them up with desks, and away they went. And some of them are still working in the industry. I'm not going to name names. By contrast, there were people who were just not nice people. They were not socially, not people that I think anyone would accuse them of being socially strong. But boy, they were determined, and they were talented, and they kept at it. And as a result, they've had lifelong careers. So I wish, I mean, it didn't stop me because I was determined. The fact that I was determined is probably why I had as much of a career as I did at a certain point. I was just determined to, I was just determined that I was going to keep working once I had a job. But I didn't realize how important it was until years later, that it was something that you need to keep going. You need to keep pushing if it's something you want. And then that ends up being a lot of the secrets to success for a lot of people. Patience is a virtue, and yet at the same time, don't be so patient that you get complacent. If I had had somebody tell me that early on, I would have changed some of my directions in life. I wanted so badly for things to happen quickly, and I didn't realize that nothing happens quickly. Nothing happens quickly. Anything that happens quickly is false. You think it's one thing, and it really isn't. When people talk about overnight success, what they mean is somebody who worked and worked and worked, and eventually they got recognized for their work. It's the same philosophy that goes behind, maybe you heard this one. Oh, I was looking for my missing whatever, and it ended up being in the last place that I looked. Why? Well, because I didn't look anymore after that. So it's the same thing. The same philosophy goes with career success as well. But I wish that people had told me that a lot of it is just hanging around, being excited, being interested, and just not going away. And then while you're doing that, applying your craft and practicing and keeping relevant and learning about what's going on in the industry, and making friends, and that as much of that is what's going to be important as anything else. And then one last one that I think is a really important philosophy that I learned. I'm not going to be shy about naming this name because it was such good advice, and he was such a good advice giver. One of my first mentors was Dale Bear, a brilliant master animator who is, as far as I know, still at Disney. And he had said to me, I was real disappointed I wasn't going to get a credit on my first film, which was Prince and the Pauper. And it was going to be a big release. A lot of people were going to see it. Not that big a release. In retrospect, Mermaid was the big one, and then Beauty and the Beast was the next one, and this one fell between the cracks. It was attached to Rescuers Down Under, which was not a big hit, but they didn't need it to be a big hit. They just were trying out new things with that film. And it did well. It was not a flop either, but it's not considered one of their big cornerstone moments of the 90s. But anyway, so I'm working on this. Drawing Mickey Mouse on my first animating job. And I was so excited about it, but I wasn't going to get a credit on it. I couldn't go to the party, rep party, nor could I go to the screening, and nor could I be in the photograph because I was not part of the Animation Guild Union at the time. They had employed me to work on the film, sort of like a trainee, somebody who was in progress. And after that, I was in the union, and everything was fine. But while I was working on Prince of the Pauper, I was not in the union. And so I couldn't get a credit for the film, and I couldn't get any of the perks that went with the film. And I was really upset. And Dale Bear, master animator who owned Bear Animation, my first studio, he took pity on my plight. Must have been such a brat, but he was so cool. And he said, there will be others. There will be many others. And there will be so many films to your credit that you won't even remember half of them. And he was right. Not about half of them, but there are films I've forgotten that I worked on. Big films that I just didn't see, didn't care. But what he said is in the end, what matters is the time you spent working on your film, the people that you worked with, and the things that you remember about working on the films. And getting a credit, they'll come and go. Making a lot of money, that'll come and go. Sometimes you'll make a lot of, sometimes you won't. But it's the time that you spent on the film that's the most important of all. If you're enjoying the process, or if you're not enjoying the process, that's what you'll remember. And so that's what I offer up to those of you who are starting out in the business. I'm going to shut this off now and go wide and say that's what I offer up to those of you who are starting out in the business. For my final thought for the evening or for the day, depending on where you are, is enjoy the process. If you're not employed right now and you're trying to become employed, it's likely this will be the only time in your life that you'll feel like that you'll be looking for that first big break in whatever it is that you want to do. There will be times when you'll be unemployed in between, but there's only going to be one experience where you go from being that person who's dreaming about doing something to being that person who's now employed and is looking for the next big thing. And so enjoy the process. It's scary, it's crazy, you're impatient, you're hungry. Those are all good things. Those things don't last, they go away eventually. And so enjoy it while it lasts. You'll be laughing about this later. As scary and exciting and nerve-wracking as times can be when you're starting out. Later, when you look back on it, as I'm lucky enough to be able to do, you'll realize what a game it all was and how fun it all was in the end. And in some cases, people will wish they had enjoyed it more. I enjoyed it as much as I possibly could. I just spent a lot more time being frustrated than I think I would if I had known how it was all going to turn out, that everything was going to work out. But it was that hunger that got me to do things in the first place. The not knowing, being curious and scared and hungry and angry, or whatever it is that you want to call it. But those driving forces that make you strive to go and make a film, which is not an easy thing to do, or get a job, which is not an easy thing to do necessarily. Change careers, change the face of whatever medium you like to work in through your work. If I had known that when I look back on it, it would all seem like almost quaint, then I might have not been so crazy at the time, so obsessive. But it was because I was crazy and obsessive that I got those jobs. And so enjoy it. Yeah, be afraid, be frustrated, be crazy, be obsessive, because that's what's going to get you the gig, probably. It's going to make you competitive, but at the same time, a little voice in the back of your head should really just be delighting in everything and enjoying it, because again, you only go through it once, and then after that, you start heading down the road to becoming the jaded old person, going, yeah, another one, right, JD? So, but you know, again, everybody's journey is a different one, and so I wish you the best of luck on your journey wherever it takes you. My journey is going to take me out of this stream here in a moment. I look forward to seeing some of you again next time. If you're willing to join me, I will be here same time, same place, working on more animation fun. I will always try to come up with things that are new and different to work on or talk about. But I'll probably be working on this scene with the cat for another couple weeks at least, and so you guys can see something finished again. Again, if you want to see something finished, check out one of the other streams. If you want to see other topics, check out the other streams. If you want to learn more about cgspectrum.com, go to cgspectrum.com. We'd love to hear from you. But barring that, it's been great talking to you today. And I have to leave in 5 minutes to come back. Great. Well, it's been great. Thanks, Kevin. Come with more questions. That's what I'm here for, to help answer questions for you and help guide you guys into whatever goals you want. So thanks for dropping by. And I will see you next time. Have a great rest of your day or night. Have a great rest of the week. And keep working, keep having fun, and take care. Scott Claus signing off for another live stream session. Bye.